We've been much more critical than we typically are, but I think it's with love, right?
Yeah.
Like we love this game still, and we want it to be successful, and it does them no favors to pretend like everything is fine when it isn't.
Yeah. Welcome to episode 506 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, July 17th, 2025, in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. From North Rand, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
And from Teldrassil, California, we have Megasa for part of the show.
For now.
For now.
And from all around the world, we have you, dear listeners. This week's episode is brought to you by our producers, Number Theory, Crash, Beef Squatch, David P., Jeremy T., Battle Caps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, May, SSJ5 Goku, NY Kiwi, and Spine. And by our patrons of the week, Livdera and Nabatean. You can go to patreon.com/coinconcede to get perks like thank you at the top of the show, bonus post-show content, early access to new episodes, one-on-one coaching sessions, and help support the show in the process. If you would like to support the show but cannot do so monetarily, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your podcast feed of choice, as it always helps other people find the show. So, Life and Ladder. I mentioned this briefly before we hit record, but my Steam Deck is no more. It kicked the bucket. I didn't drop it or anything. As far as I know, I didn't do anything unless there was something wrong with one of my chargers. But it's supposed to, even if you use something that's like a higher wattage than it does, right? It wants a 45 watt charger, or at least comes with one, but it's supposed to like moderate. I don't know if that broke or something, but yeah, I heard a spark sound at one point, didn't know where it came from, and then realized I kind of smelled a burning-y smell coming from the Steam Deck, and it just kept like charging less and less well until it stopped charging altogether. So hopefully Steam support will let me send it in and they will either replace it or repair it or something without me having to pay a whole new $600, because yeah.
That would suck. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm
What about
sorry
y'all?
that happened. At least it did. At least it didn't catch on fire while it was in your hand. So that's a good thing. But
Yeah. I mean, worse would be if it just like while it was charging over the couch or something, just like set stuff on fire and I woke up
that
to
also
a,
would be
a
bad.
fiery
Yes.
couch. That would have been the worst case scenario.
Yes, that would also be bad. I had a better weekend. I took the day off on Friday, and the oldest and I went to Command Fest in Worcester for 3 days, and it was actually really nice. I was a little bit worried about her stamina because this was a lot. Because we did like 2 or 3 games at the store, and then she was pretty much done. But this was like all day, all 3. Because I'm like, I paid a lot of money for this badge, so I'm getting my money's worth out of this badge. And they also give you like X number of like vouchers for like on-demand pods. I mean, they had like a casual area where you could just go find people, but also they had like events where you could like get matched up, and then they had prizes from the prize wall. So, and I'm like, well, we have them and they give us packs when we finish, so we should use them. So we basically played until we used them up, which actually took most of the weekend, but it was really great. Like one of the things I really liked is that they had like 3 different types of like pods that you could sign up for. One was like winner takes all the prizes. So that was basically like the competitive decks, and we just avoided that like the plague. Like we had no interest because like my decks are not built for that. Her decks are super not built for that. And like, I don't want that kind of pressure when I'm playing Commander. I'm just there to have a good time. So then there was also Two-Headed Giant. We tried that once, and I realized that my decks were not built for that, nor were hers. And like, I had something that wanted to do a thing on every turn, so that every 4 times that it does something happens. I don't need to get into the details, but when both players take their turn at once, then there's only 2 turns instead of 4 every turn cycle, and it works like half as well. And like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. So
Yeah.
The third one was like, they called it Lucky Sevens, where basically nobody can win before turn 7. Like your health could be 150 and it doesn't matter. Like you literally just cannot lose before turn 7. And other than that, everything's the same. And then they would give like 80 prize tickets to each person, and then the winner would get an additional 40 and then an additional voucher to basically rebuy. And that was like, okay, well, we know we're going to get like 2 packs or, 1 pack of like a fancy set or whatever. So we just did that. And what was nice about it is that it kind of divided all the tryhards from the people who were just there to have a good time, because all the tryhards would go do the winner take all and everybody else would go into this. And all the games were really chill and nice. So we had a really good time. She had a really good time, which was I was more worried about her. I figured I would be fine, but I was more worried about her. But she really did have a good time. Like I finally landed on builds for the 2 decks that she brought that she was playing a lot, which was good because the last time we played it at the store, one of them fell on its face and I had to do a big rework. But we got there, and she won a couple games even. And I got to cycle through almost all of my decks, and they, except for one, of course, the one aggressive one, didn't do well. Everything else was fine. But
Go figure.
It's actually not that aggressive, but it's a color combo I don't play often. That and I clearly don't know how to build it correctly yet, but that's fine. We'll figure it out. Or Edel will help me, because that's what Edel does. But
of unique formats, I'm partial to one called Star. Where everyone plays, you've got 5 people, each playing monocolor, and you sit in a circle in the orientation of the like color star of Magic. And so each of you only basically has 2 opponents. You're trying to kill your 2 enemy colors. So you kind of like form alliances with the people that aren't your 2 major enemy colors, but you're still not completely allies, because whoever takes out their 2 enemy colors wins, right?
Yeah.
So, that's a fun. But of course, not a lot of people don't make monocolor commander decks.
Yeah, I have one, and it basically is only monocolor because that's the commander that lets you steal the cards from everybody else and play everything from everybody. So,
of course,
yeah. But and then I came back and saw that this meta was on fire, so that was fun. So I didn't play a lot of standard this week. I actually played a fair amount of arena this week, and arena was pretty decent. I got some quests, and I didn't do particularly well. I had like 3 win runs at underground, but I enjoyed it. It was a nice change of pace from standard. I tried some standard today. After the patch, I played Protoss Priest, and I won 5 games and only lost 1, and beat most of the decks that I expected to see. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but it is a thing. I was playing Priest, so that's at least and it wasn't, and there were no Menagerie Jugs in my deck, so that's an improvement, I suppose. But
what about you, Megasa?
Well, I was originally going to completely skip this podcast week and said that like last week. I was like, heads up, I have too much stuff going on this week. I'm not going to do it. And I probably shouldn't be here because I have like 3 overlapping classes, and like one of them, there was like a scheduling error. So it seems like it was going to be at one time and then it wasn't. So I withdrew, but then I wanted it back. And then anyway, boring bureaucratic difficulties that are mostly sorted out now, probably. Just lots of like presentations and reports and write-ups and stuff. But we have a discussion for Dexplanations, which we're actually going to switch the order and do Dexplanations first and news second. I couldn't help myself. I needed to weigh in. And I got home today and I was like, I just have to put my thoughts down and then I'll be able to focus. And of course, that turned into long show notes. But we will do our best here. I haven't played a lot of Hearthstone because of the aforementioned amount of work for all the overlapping grad school classes. But I did play a little bit of Wilted OTK Priest before the patch. Did nerf that a little bit. Probably in a fairly significant way, actually. But I played a little bit pre-patch and won several times just on turn 7. Wasn't every time, but you could kind of consistently, if your draw wasn't terrible and you weren't under too much pressure, just go off on turn 7 and kill people. I had one game where my opponent, who was, of course, a Starship Death Knight, I just drew really terribly. I didn't get any of my draw. I didn't get my Careless Crafters. I was just sitting there with one Wilted Shadow in my hand. For anyone who was not paying attention to this deck because we mentioned it last week but didn't actually talk about it. Wilted Shadow is the card that when you heal the opponent, it attacks them, and you can do quite the OTK with it. Anyway, so I got going slowly, so that gave them a lot of time to get a lot of armor. Finally, they launched their starship and had a bunch of 10 drops, and I needed to win that turn or I was dead. They had 142 life between their max life gain and their armor. I did 132 and then conceded. There was no way I had counted it. I was just...
You don't count at that point. Like, it doesn't matter. Like...
I was like, I don't think this is enough, but I'm going to find out. It was closer than I thought, actually, by a fair margin. I also had to show them that I did have a lot of damage, okay? Maybe not enough to kill them. So we will get into my thoughts on that game, where basically this shouldn't be possible in either direction, either the amount of life that they have or the amount of damage that I did. But I did have some fun playing the Wilted OTK Priest as a little bit of change of pace besides just the Menagerie Priest. So, yeah, that's...
Yeah. So we have a patch to talk about. We are going to talk about that in news, but as Megasa said, we're going to move that after Dexplanation so that she can get back to work and get this, and we will, Edel and I will talk about the actual patch. But before we talk about the patch, we need to talk about how we got here, and that's what we're going to talk about in Dexplanations.
All right, so there has been a lot of discourse, for lack of a better term, about the state of Hearthstone in the Hearthstone community over the past couple of weeks. We have in the show notes links to a video from Kibler, the latest Vicious Syndicate podcast from July 12th, which is the most recent one as we're recording this, and a video from Regis. And there's been other takes by plenty of other creators as well, where people are talking about a general sense of what's going on with Hearthstone, particularly with the latest... I suppose we can just have sort of a short list of issues that people have brought up. For Kibler, it was enough that he actually said that he's going to be taking a break from Hearthstone. Other creators who have said here are not necessarily that extreme, but definitely there's been a sense that people have been dissatisfied with various things that are going on in the game. And a conversation about where do we think the design is headed right now? Where would we like to see it going? So some of the issues raised on the more like business and company side, we won't talk about this again, but monetization, especially pets, also Arena to some extent. We talked about that at length a couple episodes ago. Hat's contract not being renewed and doesn't really give a lot of confidence in their investment in the community. Again, we are biased on that, but also, as a lot of creators have said, he really went above and beyond. There are other great people on the community team, but Hat did like 3 people's job at least. Twist has, there was no news at all on Twist, and people are like, is Twist ever coming back? Have they just abandoned it? Why haven't they said that? And this one, we can't know exactly, but it feels like there might be an underinvestment in sort of testing and maybe final design. There don't seem to be a lot of people who've been put onto that. And it definitely feels like this expansion, the quest decks in particular, with the exception of Paladin and maybe sort of Warrior, seemed maybe balanced against themselves, but against the rest of the meta, very much not. We'll see what this patch did. And so I think that raised some questions about, like, do they have the resources to be doing enough testing of this?
Yeah, it felt like, as you say, that they play tested. It's like if you said, okay, everyone play test what you want to play test with the new cards and report back, and okay, you've got all kinds of people doing the testing day, and everyone wants to play decks with the new cards, right? Because they're excited about the stuff they're going to put out too, and so they're all playing quest decks or Ungoro decks, and no one is being the person to just play Menagerie DK, play Hydration Station Warrior, play whatever the old good decks are, play aggro Demon Hunter, to kind of show, hey, maybe these aren't gonna keep up. That's what it felt like.
back when I used to do like the card reviews, like the full F135 set card reviews on my old podcast, right? There was something that I used to say a lot, which was like the cards that look really scary usually aren't the ones you need to worry about. It's usually the ones you can't figure out why you would want to do that in the first place. They're the ones you need to worry about. And I don't feel that way anymore. Like, very often it is the cards that look spooky that are actually broken. Like that's how it's felt recently. I mean, certainly in this set, like Low in particular looked spooky. Like, this is dangerous. We know this is dangerous. We've seen a version of this card, this exact effect before, and it broke the meta in Wild. And Standard is a lot easier to break than Wild. And lo and behold, sorry, I didn't even mean to do it that time, but I promise you I didn't. But lo and behold, like that's what happened. Like when we're able to look at like, oh, this looks like it's going to be broken, and it is broken. That's a problem, because it used to be that you would trust that they tested all those things and they're willing to put that out because no, it looks a lot scarier than it is. And that doesn't feel like that anymore.
We don't know exactly, like they don't have like a list of like these are the designers on different teams, but from what I was able to find like on LinkedIn and that kind of thing, it seems like there is one person whose full-time job is final design. Just more eyes might be helpful, but it's not necessarily, I don't want to put everything on final design. It also has to do with the game as a whole, but certainly would not be the first time that a company maybe should have had more people on something than it does. But in terms of the design, I think everyone can agree there was a lack of impact from a lot of sets from Lost City of Ungoro on launch. Possibly still, we will see. There's been a lot of, this one especially, like huge balance changes. And those are really hard to anticipate the effects of. But people have felt like they've been needed, and so we're kind of in this cycle. There's a general sense from many creators and players that I have seen saying either that they feel like there isn't a design direction or they don't agree with the design direction that they see. Again, it's really hard to say exactly like what's the intention. We don't necessarily know that. And there's always people who are dissatisfied, but there does seem to be an increase in the number of creators and players I have seen who are just long-term frustrated with the meta. Even for myself as someone who, like, in this past meta, Menagerie Jug decks. I like Menagerie Jug decks and they were great. But I also see that there were, that's not the only thing that I want in a meta, is to be able to smart people. Mm-hmm. And there's been other aggro decks that I've enjoyed more in the past. So our major question for here is, if we have a design problem, what might that be, right? It's easy to say, I'm not feeling it. And a lot harder to say why. So I want to summarize a little bit of some of the things that people have been saying, and we will, as we go on, add our thoughts to the situation. So one thing that people have brought up is problems with recent set mechanics. And Vicious Syndicate, for example, Zacho made the argument that quests without lethality, because quests have such a high cost in terms of it's a card in the mulligan, for example, that you really need like a huge sort of lethal payoff for it. And so most of these quests don't have that. He actually feels like quest lines, although they were done in a very lethal way in Stormwind, don't have to be done in a very lethal way and maybe would have been better because they have those incremental rewards.
And I think also, like, barring the Demon Hunter quest line where the cost reduction was built into the quest, like if you have the Mage quest line without Encanter's Flow, if you have the Warlock quest line without Mithril Rod, right? It was the cost reduction in combination with efficient card draw that made the lethal win conditions so lethal and so early in the game. And I think you have a very different Stormwind if just Flow and Rod don't exist and the Demon Hunter quest line does not do reductions along the way and does something else.
Especially because you weren't even finishing the Demon Hunter quest half the time.
Yeah, like, I mean that one, the whole game was the reduction.
But the other thing about quests is that they're asking you to play a bunch of bad cards, right? It's not just the turn one a lot of the time. Like, they're asking you to put a lot of suboptimal cards into your deck that, with the promise that if you do the thing that it will make up for it later. First of all, you need to get to later, which was the problem with the first meta, is that you weren't getting to later. And that was partially because of the Murloc quest and Low Druid, that the only way to beat them was to go faster, and everything that was faster than Low Druid and Quest Paladin was also faster than all the other quest decks.
Yeah.
But
And then like later, like Wilted OTK Priest was
right,
overtaking some of the others, and yeah.
But even then, right, like if you're not finishing, then it becomes a race to finish the quest as quickly as possible, because you need to make up for the fact that you're playing crap in your deck. And that's that. If the quest isn't actually winning you the game or generating an obscene amount of value over the course of the rest of the game once you complete it, then you're just sitting there playing bad cards, and that's not fun if that's the case, right?
Well, no, that varies somewhat from quest to quest, right? Like the rogue one is particularly egregious, although spoiler, there might be a rogue deck. It might it might have been buffed enough. We'll see. Because Merchant of Legend is just really not great because you're putting a bunch of junk in your deck. Like because shuffling not only means running some junk cards, but also like shuffling potentially junk cards into your deck. Like that's a pretty steep price. It's a really good payoff of 1 mana, draw 2 cards, hero power, but not something that's going to just win you the game right away for getting it. And I think all of them, it's just like, yeah, they this time around, they generally give you a win condition over time rather than a win condition in the next couple turns. And yeah, the price of card in the mulligan, both in terms of your turn 1 and fewer cards in hand effectively, is just like very, very steep in modern Hearthstone. One of my sort of suggestions of like, well, maybe just a quick fix is the quest draws you a card. And I mean, one argument against that is like, oh, but then wouldn't some decks just run the quest basically to be a 29 card deck? And I'm like, if you're in that deep, like, fine. I don't think that's that big of an issue, but yeah, it just feels like these costs, both in terms of deck building constraints and just the always asked of you cost for a quest of card in the mulligan, have gotten pretty steep if you are now going to say, well, our design philosophy doesn't want these to be, very, very win condition-y, right? Very, I will kill you quickly kind of payoffs. Yeah, I really liked what Zacho had to say on this, which is like, quest lines are better, right? They are a better mechanic than quests. It was just that the support cards in Stormwind made those decks insane, right? Like, you could do quest lines and not have them break the game.
Yeah,
But-
they give you a little bit of incremental reward so that it's not just like I have to spend so long doing things I don't really want to do, right? There's steps to the process that you're doing, but still you're going towards a plan. And I also want to know, when I'm summarizing other people's, I linked the videos that we're talking about. I'm obviously going to be oversimplifying to some extent. We'll try to represent as well as possible. So one thing that Kibler said about both Imbue and Quests was that he felt like they were mechanics that are either broken or just do nothing, which Regis kind of went further into saying that he felt that might have been partly because some of the sets are overly synergistic or, quote, parasitic, which is something, Wicked, that you've mentioned before. Yeah. This doesn't have to come from a Quest or Imbue necessarily, but when all of the set or most of the set lives or dies together, it makes it really hard to, like, either it tends to be a little overly powerful, like maybe StarCraft sets, which were fun, but then there was sort of, because it was a mini set, there was like all the classes pretty similar, or they just don't land at all, and then the entire set doesn't really land. It's harder to have some of the cards work, some of the cards not, and it's harder to build sort of unique decks that weren't anticipated by the set, would be, I think, part of the points that Regis was making.
I mean, you look at, like, the Warlock quest, all these things that give you temporary cards. Maybe you can run some of those in like a Just Zoo deck, but really they exist for the quest. And like similarly in Rogue, there are these shuffle cards that you're not really going to run outside of the quest deck. It's not the case for all the things, although I think some of the mage stuff, like, you discover's a little more flexible, but there's still certain things that like you're not going to do if you're not doing the quest. And Imbue was a big offender there, right? That it's like, well, if you're not playing the Imbue deck, you have fewer new cards for the class. And that could be because you're not interested in the Imbue deck, or the Imbue deck doesn't work, as kind of happened. And yeah, it just means like the stuff kind of succeeds or fails together. I think there's certainly some benefits when it's a little more fluid and done pretty well, where you can have stuff that, oh, this in a cool way works for both the bespoke set mechanic and can be used in other ways. Like, I really like the shaman stuff, where it's all these creatures that are different minion types, right? That like, yes, help you with the quest a bunch, but you can also just play an elemental shaman or just play an aggressive menagerie shaman and not be quest, and they're fine. I think that's an example where it kind of works a bit both ways. But there's still some stuff that's like cares about the cinders or embers or whatever they're called, and like you're not going to run some of those without the others necessarily. Yeah, it just means there's a lot more cards that sort of live or die together. I feel like the only one that kind of worked out was Demon Hunter not running the quest, but running a couple of the aggressive cards, like the new weapon that summons a 2/1 rush. And I think there was like one other thing that they ran from the new set, but specifically not the quest, because the quest was too hard to complete.
Yeah, and that happens a lot, right? It feels like there's been, for probably like the past, I want to say like 3 years, there's been more of a focus on packages as opposed to just cards. And those packages are really intended, it feels like they're designing decks more than cards a lot of times, right? Like, it almost feels like each set is kind of like the equivalent of like a commander precon to some extent, where they're intended to work together, and a lot of them just don't stand on their own, and they stand together or they fall together, right? That's a problem when just the overall package doesn't work. I was going to kind of bring this up later, but I'm going to bring it up now, because like, it has to be competitively viable in order to work. That's the bar that we're dealing with, because standard is the primary mode by a wide margin, right? Like, yes, wild exists. It's even harder to break into wild than it is in standard, unless you're giga broken. And arena, you get offered one legendary or maybe two in underground, right? So like, you're not even seeing a lot of the legendaries there that a lot of these are kind of centered around. So it really has to be standard. And not every card can be competitively viable. It's just really not a reasonable standard. Like, when you look at Magic and you look at what's in standard, like, most of the cards that get released in a new set don't make it into standard. Like, and which is not to say that Magic is doing great all the time. Like, they had a historically bad standard meta up until a couple of weeks ago. So it's not to say that Magic is like some utopia that we should be aiming for, but like, it doesn't seem like that's the intent. Like, they're designing a set to be like, I mean, their sets are self-contained for limited, and then they have Commander, and they have other formats where things come in. So if it doesn't hit in standard, it's not the end of the world. But here, it has to be playable in standard, or the card may just as well not exist. And this kind of goes to something that Regis also brought up in his video, that I mean, I've kind of made this point too, but I hadn't really tied it together, that just like in the past couple of years, we've retired Classic in favor of Twist, and then Twist went away. And we don't know what's going on with it. It's not dead, but it's like Schrodinger's mode at this point. Like, it's not dead, but it's certainly not alive, right? And Duels was retired, And I understand why, right? Like, it was a lot of maintenance for duels. I get it, but that was a really cool place where you could use cards that just were not working in standard. And to a lesser extent, Twist was the same way. And those are gone. You aren't guaranteed it. Arena, it really doesn't matter, right? Because, like, for this purpose, because yeah, the cards are cool to play in Arena, but they're not your cards, right? Like, you didn't pay for those. You're not keeping those cards that you're getting in Arena. They're not the cards that you paid to open packs open. So if you can't use them in Standard or Wild, you may as well have just not gotten the cards. And so what that leads to is that we have to keep buffing everything to make it viable, or nerfing things really drastically because the new stuff has to be playable, or else, like, when we get into the patch, like, there's at least one legendary, maybe more. I'm not remembering off the top of my head, that, like, we are effectively nerfing into oblivion from the last set. And it's like a fairly major rework that was just released 3 months ago, right? And because the new stuff has to shine that hard, and it's like, what? So even when you have these cards, you have them. It used to be that you'd have a card and it would be something you would have for 2 years. And the argument for not doing rotations more frequently or whatever would be, well, we need new players to be more stable. And we're just deleting cards as soon as the next set comes out now anyway. Right? Like, in some cases, not everything, but, like, we're reworking or just drastically nerfing these cards to the point where we don't have that stability anymore either, just to make sure that the new stuff hits.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll talk about power creep in just a second, because that transitions nicely into it. I think in terms of the synergy, like, there's a balance. Sometimes packages can be really cool and flexible. Like, I think the Discover package in Hunter has been used in different kinds of decks,
sure,
while still being powerful, but it's not. We've called plenty of decks Discover Hunter, but they're not all the same deck. Mm-hmm. So that, I think, is a really successful package. And, it would be difficult to design 10 completely disconnected cards, and that's not necessarily what we're saying. But there seems like there's maybe too far on one side of that in many classes recently. Not every package, not every set, but when you have decks emerge that just, like, nobody really anticipated, that's really cool. And kind of by definition, that's hard to design for, but when everything is going to the same place, it works or it doesn't.
The creativity is kind of diminished a little bit, right? Because if they're designing decks, right, then there's less room for brewers. And I know I've seen this from, I mean, there are people like Funky Monkey, God bless him, who will, find treasure in trash, and he will make all kinds of stuff and is incredibly creative. Most people have some creativity, but not to that level. But it's like, when the good stuff is just laid out in front of you, there's not a whole lot of incentive to try to brew, right? Because you're very rarely going to hit on something that is strictly better than what has already been laid out for you by initial design.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll lay out a package that's hard. Like, the Quest Priest, unfortunately, nobody has figured out how to make this work, and they did buff it, but probably because, at least pre-patch and maybe still, it was, like, impossible to make work. But it was kind of cool because I was like, well, there's a lot of ways we can go with this. Whereas something like the Murloc Paladin is like, well, there's obviously one way to go with it. And then that also makes it harder. One point that Regis made was that he felt like, because those decks are so optimized, and, Murloc Paladin had weaknesses, I want to say clearly, but when you have really designed decks, it makes it harder for other decks to be almost as good. Like, there's always going to be decks that are better and more optimized that people have figured out, and that deck and stabilizes in the meta. Like, that's always going to be true, but there might be more of a gap between those and other kinds of decks that people are brewing. So I think Regis was focusing on this in part because he had been trying to make a video where he was going to see if he could find something a little bit unique or off meta to showcase in a video, and just, like, could not. So made this talking video instead. But to transition to power creep has been a big topic, and not everyone quite agrees on, I think, what people can agree on is that with the potential exception of sets from this year, minus StarCraft, overall, modern Hearthstone cards are more powerful than early Hearthstone cards. I think it's just a generally accepted statement. What is a little bit more controversial is how much power creep do we want, basically. So Kibler, to simplify a little bit, basically, he says power creep in Hearthstone has been really significant, and he feels like in the current meta, it's really over promoting aggressive strategies, aggressive in combo, over sort of more mid-range and control and the type of decks that he likes to play. Zacho and Vicious Syndicate felt like part of the problem is that the team has been overly afraid of power creep. He feels like gradual power creep is inevitable, and to some extent healthy. He feels he made an analogy of like inflation. Obviously, too much of that is really, really bad, but deflation is also bad. And like it seems like it would be good, but it actually isn't economically. So he feels like because there's been, and the team did say in the nicknamed agency patch from some time ago that they wanted the power level overall to be lower. Zacho feels that they've been over nerfing old cards, and that part of the problem we've had now is they've been producing underpowered new cards, and that leads to a problem. I think Regis took more of a middle ground, but did say like, okay, but if you have a couple underpowered sets in a row, but the old stuff hasn't rotated yet, you kind of have a problem, right? Like we have quest decks that can't compete with old decks, and I think just the main difference of opinion is like, should you just aim a little higher on new cards and nerf the new cards if necessary, or should we like nerf the old stuff a bunch, or do we just have to wait? Like, what is the optimal solution here? But I do agree overall that like these sets have been much more cautious on power, except for StarCraft, which is kind of the exception that proves the rule, and that has led to this expansion like not landing as well as it could.
I mean, you look at basically the last 3 expansion launches, right? Not the mini sets, but the expansions. All of them required a major patch that nerfed a bunch of older stuff and buffed a bunch of the new stuff. That's not good. Just the nerfing a bunch of old stuff, okay, whatever. But the fact that you have had to do that at the same time as a desperate, okay, we need to buff the new stuff because people don't feel like they got their money's worth, right? Because they're not playing new cards, not playing new decks, except for, the very select standout new cards, right? Oh, Quasar is breaking the game. Oh, Ethereal Oracle is causing problems, right? Ceaseless. Like, it's not that there have been 0 powerful cards. It's just that, like, the outliers are clear. A Mirdrasil. Like, this situation where you have this weird, like, up and down of, like, there's just a couple of spikes that are, like, single cards that you hope your class that you play gets or whatever. That, as you were saying, Wicked, it's like, you can tell they're going to be broken or really good. And then the, like, mechanic that advertised the expansion is a flop. And this is the 3rd time we're having that, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you check all the balance patches. It's a lot of perils and whiz-bang stuff that has been repeatedly getting nerfed. I mean, Ziliax has been nerfed like multiple times.
Yeah.
When you go back into last year, there's like Badlands stuff. There's whatever, Reno, like there's various of that previous stuff. And I think that's like part of how we got here is like Badlands and Festival, like we sort of had this huge, powerful year of right? I think so. I'm not crazy, of Festival Titans, Badlands.
And
then
there's a lot of generically powerful stuff in that year of sets. Yes.
And then Whizbang Perils. And then there's just a massive drop off, right?
Yeah.
For the last 3 expansions. And I mean, I guess we're coming up on the final one of the year. Like, congrats, if we make it to rotation, you have deflated your way into like a very different game. but that doesn't seem like what you really want to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to add that I feel like I think power creep can be unbalanced, but it doesn't have to just mean more damage, right? It can also mean
Right.
bigger board clears, more defensibility. I am going to argue, I have a theory about how I think some numbers do probably need to come down. Specifically, armor has gotten huge, and OTK damage has gotten huge.
And those things are related.
They drive each other. They are related. I will get to that whole thing in a second. But I do generally agree that like power creep doesn't necessarily inherently favor one strategy over another, and is not inherently bad. There probably is certain numbers that need to go down, but it is just having the sets be less powerful is so hard in the interim. Even if it turned out well, which I'm not sure it would. If we just wait, it is so hard in the interim.
And one other thing, at least in terms of what Kibler's saying, that it actually just occurred to me now, and I wonder if this is happening. It feels like the entire control landscape of this meta and the last couple feel like an overreaction to Reno. Because Reno was very, very loudly like disliked by a lot of the community. Like there was a lot of strong feedback about Reno, that it invalidated death rattle synergies, that it felt bad to have your entire board wiped out and then not be able to do anything after that. And it feels like anything that is close to a silence at this point is gone. Right.
Yeah.
And I know I've made the joke about Shard of the Naru a million times, and I know it's a meme at this point, but there's nothing like that, right? Like we have like Hex and that's it. And even when we had Bob for a little while and then they took that out, and there's just like, that's what also one of the reasons that we have so much armor is there's no way to disrupt it, right? There's no counterplay to that strategy in terms of being able to disrupt what they're doing, because all those tools have been taken away, and I don't know if those things are related, but it certainly does feel like maybe they took the wrong lessons from what people didn't like about Reno. I think people more so didn't like, hey, you just invalidated my board and also took away my next turn.
Mm-hmm.
More so than just like you poofed all my minions, right?
Well, and there were so many levels to Reno, right? It was that like it's a neutral, so anyone who wants to play Highlander or early on turbo draws their deck can run it to invalidate your board and your next turn. Yeah, it was so many things, and it got nerfed a bunch of times to be different states, but was still played the entire time. And in particular, Kibler talks about the one patch where it's like, okay, they nerf Reno to not showdown you and to not poof anymore. I think I forget exactly how, or maybe it's still poofed, but
I think it left locations. That was the other thing, is it would leave locations
and like dormant things, I think.
Yeah, I think it was just like, oh, it's only minions, right? It no longer poofs location because starships, right? You don't want to poof starships.
Yeah. Right.
There were all these things like so that people could do big minions. And then Bob came out as part of an event. And I think this has happened a couple of times, right? Where they put something out on flavor. And the flavor is 10 out of 10 on point. Like the effects make sense and match the flavor, but then it's ruinous gameplay wise.
Yeah.
Right? Like Bob was super miserable when it was pick up the enemy minion and put it into my hand, such that it's again a poof effect, right? Like they don't get the death rattle or anything else on it, and they're literally putting it into their hand. And here, have 3 coins, so you burn a card.
And available to every class.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Again, available to every class. And I think there is now this dramatic backlash where, well, it's only that tradable 4-drop that's silence, and it's single target silence, and like, good luck. There's also like, Shaman has Hex, but Mage doesn't even have Polymorph right now.
I drafted a life sentence in Arena.
Oh my goodness.
And it was just like, oh man, I remember when we used to be able to do this, and it was fantastic. Like, for those of you who don't remember, Life Sentence was a 4-mana spell for Mage that just said remove target menu from the game.
Yeah. But also, like, Tortola has Elusive. And Ziliax is elusive. So like even if we did have some of these things,
that was part of why Bob was so powerful, is because
Right.
elusive didn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, and like, okay, you could run Black Knight, but it still gets destroyed. So they resurrect it. Which, like, fine. Tortola is a good, powerful card. Great. Although it does mean that there's this late game strategy with Hydration Station that like grinds out a lot of stuff. And if you chemical spill Tortola into play, that just ends the game against some aggressive decks. Like there are these imbalances such that, yeah, I feel like the biggest takeaway from Kibler and Zacho's kind of monologues is that it doesn't feel like there's a direction, right? Yeah. It's just vibes based on fears, right? That it's like, well, we know that people we're concerned about power creep and people didn't like these effects, so we're trying to course correct. But the way they're doing that is making a bunch of expansions that don't hit. And I don't think that's the intent. But yeah, and when you are trying to make that move, it just does seem awkward to choose imbue and quests as like your mechanics while you're trying to pivot to a like more agency, board-based gameplay kind of thing.
Yeah, and this is all of these things we're saying. There's a lot of competing interests in Hearthstone. Like, it is difficult to balance these things. I don't want to underestimate that.
Yeah.
My theory about the damage versus armor getting a little out of hand, and I think that actually not just affecting like control decks and OTK decks, but also like the kind of mid-rangey decks that Kibler likes to play. My theory there is that it is trying to solve a genuine design conundrum, but in a way that I see the logic of, but I think has gone to a place where it's suppressing some strategies that people really like to play. So there is a concept, this tangent is going to come back around, I promise. In biology, in evolutionary biology, there's a concept that is sometimes called the evolutionary arms race. And that is, to say, for example, there is a newt in California that is like extremely, extremely toxic. And it's like,
so it's like a rogue player.
It's like,
hey.
It's like, wait a minute, this should be in Australia, not California. Like, it would fit in Australia. It's like, why is this thing so toxic? Like, it can kill. It's got a neurotoxin that can essentially kill anything that would eat it many times over. So why did this even evolve? What is the selective pressure on this to make it so extreme? Selective pressure being like a reason to evolve in some direction. Well, the answer is that one of its predators is the common garter snake, which is not very big. But the common garter snake, because it eats the newt, has been evolving resistance to this neurotoxin over time. So the more resistant the garter snake gets, the more toxic the newt has to be in order to avoid being eaten. So then the snake has to get more resistant in order to continue to have its prey, until it is insane that this newt is like this, and like you would just die if you ate it. No, you're not likely to like accidentally eat a newt, so like don't worry about it. But
speak for yourself.
The point is, this happens all the time. It's a type of co-evolution. So for example, why are cheetahs so fast? Because gazelles are really good at avoiding them, right? Mm-hmm. This is just part of how evolution works. It's a natural process, but it can also lead to situations where other species, if they don't keep up, really struggle. Or like if you have an invasive species, it can totally destabilize the ecosystem. If it was, if you put that newt into a different place where nothing can resist its poison, now nothing can eat it, and then it gets out of control, right? So you can easily get out of whack. Now, to relate this back to Hearthstone, as I was saying, where I had that game where my opponent had 142 life and I did 132 damage. This is one way of trying to solve the sort of reactive control versus OTK problem that is kind of a perennial Hearthstone problem. There are people, and I do want to say, and this is maybe controversial, I do think that reactive strategies and over-the-top strategies, they are beloved for a reason. People love to play these things. It's really easy to take the one that you like and say, well, the other one shouldn't exist and is unhealthy for the game. They do both, I think, for good reason, get criticism of, well, this is just solitaire and I lack agency. But people love, I really want to just kind of play the resource game and try to use fewer cards than my opponent, right? That when I started Hearthstone, that was my jam. That was what I really enjoyed.
That still is my jam.
And that still is Wicked's jam. Then you have people who really, especially a lot of like top legend players, love those over-the-top damage decks because they tend to be really intricate. You have to set them up. You have to survive while you're setting them up. I particularly think they're interesting when the combo pieces are flexible and they're the same things you need to survive. So it's not just like gain armor until I OTK you with Colossus. Now, anytime either of these are good, there's going to be people who hate them.
Uh-huh.
But there's a question of like, to what extent should we try to still have them in the game or like rotate through which ones? Another problem that you have is that when over the top OTK is really good, they naturally can oppress reactive decks unless you do something about it. So some of the things we've tried are, one, just have only one of them be good at a time. Two, Dirty Rat and Theotar and Disruption like that.
But people hate that as much as they hate
But
Reno.
people hate that even more, I would say.
I mean, Dirty Rat, I feel like, has become an accepted part of the game. Yeah. But, you know, as Kibler and Zacho and others will tell you, is like, it's not a good card in the deck generally, right? It is just like the only way you can win certain matchups.
Right. So it does provide a little bit of a safety valve there, and you need it to not be a good card in other situations, or that's just bad. Like if Dirty Rat was played in every deck, we'd have a serious problem. So it's good that it isn't. But so that can help. It can reduce the polarization, but it's not necessarily something people love. You also have sort of merging both the combo and control decks. You slow down the OTKs, and then you give the control decks lethality. I think there is some merit there, but it does make it a little different from the itch that people who really like these decks want to scratch. But I do think something like Rainbow Mage, people still called for Sif to be nerfed for the entire time that she was in Standard, but Rainbow Mage wasn't that fast, right?
Yeah.
Or something like Odin. People also called for Odin to be nerfed, but Odin like did win you the game eventually. But another way that you can try to deal with it is, well, reduce the polarization by giving the control classes a lot of life gain so that they can just get out of range. The problem is then the OTK decks, or any sort of burn or damage deck, or even a board-based damage deck, suddenly needs to up its game in terms of how much damage it can do. Otherwise, it just can't exist. So when you get numbers that huge, I think and especially also when you add on, they've also added on, well, I should talk about this separately, the sort of like infinite value, where I think this is part of why Wicked doesn't like control mirrors that much these days, is because it's like draw your armor as fast as possible, get to your infinite value engine as fast as possible. And that's a very different play style than I'm going to wait and use my clears as late as possible. And I'm going to try to get my like few big cards out at the right moment type of game plan. And it's not to say that like there aren't people who enjoy the sort of infinite value, draw my deck, get tons of armor, stabilize that way. Like there are people who enjoy that, but it's hard to have that and the more classic type of control strategy, I think. And when you have the need to be able to do so much damage in order to get through that much life gain, the things that exist are like super fast aggro that can get under the armor gain, with like
before they can
menagerie
get
decks,
started.
before they can get started. Or you have like super fast power spike decks like Low Druid. Before they can really get started, you have something they just cannot deal with. Or like the epitome of this would be like Dungar Druid. I think that's even worse than Low Druid, as we discussed last week.
Or you have Protoss Mage, which just does so much damage that it doesn't matter. right?
Right. Or you have these combinations like the Wilted versus the Starship DK, where it's hard to balance. Like in that game, actually, Wilted Priest was favored into the Starship DK. I was just really slow, but like there was a chance that I was slow, and then they gained so much armor that they got out of range. Protoss Mage, I think, does so much damage; it's hard to get out of range. But like, if you had 142 health, you probably could.
Yeah. Well, you dirty rat the Colossus, right? But you were right back to where we started. So yeah.
But overall, I think you either have to be blazingly fast, either in a huge spike, or they're just dead, or you have to have like so much value over the game that you can just keep pushing damage forever. But that can be pushed out by the blazingly fast aggro. Like, or you're just one of those two decks, the huge armor or the huge OTK. And what you have a little bit less of is like the flexible burn decks. But there was a burn shaman at some point that, like all of its cards were like both its survivability and its combo, and how you played it really depended on the matchup, and it was a really cool deck. That can't really exist when everybody has way too much health. Or aggro decks that have like are less completely all in on the I'm gonna kill you by turn 5 and have a little bit more of a like, or plan B, I'm gonna have a spike later and do a little over the top damage. You have some of that now, but I think it's harder to have that. Yeah, or just the consistent but limited press, like anything with limited resources kind of can't compete. Anyway, that's my spiel.
I think of like the minion type decks, tribal decks, as an example there. They still are like putting support for them, but they're not able to keep up because often these tribal decks, are not the fastest aggro deck, but they have a lot of synergy and they have power within that synergy. I guess maybe it's fine that they haven't been very competitive because apparently they're not that popular anyway, but theoretically there should be an elemental shaman, an elemental mage right now. I mean, the paladin quest obviously had its moment, but then as people went under it, it was getting crushed. And I think of like, well, when was that elemental mage good? It was when it had increased damage for each elemental you played, right? For each turn. I forget what it was called, but the 4-drop, like, what, candle?
Lamplighter?
Yeah,
Lamplighter.
Yeah. And also when it had the elemental that summoned copies of itself, both because that could be a good board, and also because if you played that post Saroon, you could kind of piece together a burn game plan with a ton of spell damage. You don't really have either of those anymore. Like, Lamplighter exists, but it's just 4 damage. And so Elemental Mage, yeah, it's sort of too fair because it ends up being too slow for the aggressive decks and not enough value for the amount of armor that the control decks gain. And so I think those are the decks that in particular get squeezed. And I think that's where they are also kind of designing, it's like the space they're designing for a lot of things to exist at the same time as they are sort of squeezing that space from both sides, either from like older cards or from the stuff that like is innocuous enough that it doesn't get the hit. Like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how Ancient of Yore survived. Like, it creates a situation where like it's tough because in some classes it is 10 armor and 2 cards, which is very good, but it's 2 shield blocks. And then in other classes, it specifically Warlock, but to some extent just compounding on the resources. Yeah, Death Knight and Warrior, right? It's like, well, either they're a class that has an ability to give it reborn, kill it, so it like comes back again, or it's just compounding on the armor or max life increase that they already have. That, as you say, the numbers just get so high, and everyone has access to the discover a minion, give it a dark gift, and there's like 2 options where if you hit Ancient of Yore, either with reborn or with the summon a 2/2 copy, where like you're getting more armor and cards. Yeah, it just feels very dangerous, and like I would have liked to see, much as you, Megesa, would have, some kind of change for Arcanite such that it's like, okay, maybe it still gives you some armor. Maybe it's a 4-mana 3/4 that gives 6 armor at a time again, just not as a death rattle, because we have all these death rattle things that are recurring it, right? And even at 5 mana, Demon Hunter was recurring it to ultimately like kill with Kane and stuff, or like get this massive starship from the death rattle recursion. And it gets recast in Death Knight because the guiding whatever redoes
Guiding
death
figure.
rattles. And if it was just like battle cry and launch gain some armor, then it would just gain some armor at those times and not have all these ways of like recursively making it happen to gain just like tons and tons of armor.
Yeah, but it's load bearing now, right? Is the problem. Like, because like if you do that to that point, right? Okay, well, now even like a nerfed wilting shadow is going to kill you and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So it's like we've kind of just we've painted ourselves into this corner.
Yeah, but like I think it gets to that point again where it's like, should wilting shadow exist? Right? Like,
well, that's the problem, right? It's like, but that's kind of the problem. Is just like this just keeps building on itself. And to Magesa's point, like we've got neurotoxins and resistance, and then but if you take one away, then you destroy the ecosystem, right? So it's like I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do anything about it. Like I don't even like the amount of armor that's in the meta as a control player. Like I think it makes the games grindier than they have to be. And I mean, like control mirrors are going to be grindy, and don't even get me started on Kill Jaden at this point, but because we don't have enough time. But I don't like, but everything has evolved to be able to get over that, right? So now you have to dial all that back, and it's like we can't just nerf everything, because I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. They've threatened a few years ago to do like a across the board nerf, but I don't think that that's going to be fun. Like at a certain point, you also just have 4 or 5 Chillwind Yetis banging into each other, and that's not fun either. So I don't know where we go from here, but I think the problem is that there doesn't seem to be a plan to address it. Right. That I think that's really, I don't know how you solve it. I'm not a designer. I don't want to try. Like there are people who are smarter than me that are paid a lot more money than this to figure it out. Right. And I am not going to pretend to have any answers here, but it doesn't seem like there is a plan to get this back into a good spot, because it seems like it's all building on each other. And every time that we have something that looks like it's stepping in that direction, there's other things that fly in the face of that. So that's, I think, where kind of the comments about it, there doesn't seem to be a plan are coming from. And that's the part that's concerning. And again, this is the 3rd set in a row that we are talking about this, right? Where we are having to go spend an entire episode. I promise you that this would be a long episode anyway. We're going to go faster when we talk about the actual balance patch. But this is another launch where we have an entire episode where it is oops all news, because we were just talking about the balance patch because it is so big. And it's like after 3 consecutive sets, I think we kind of need to hear from the game director at this point. Right? I'm serious, because like
who even is the game director? I don't remember.
He's been good about being the one to deliver bad news, right? And I think that there really needs to be some communication with the game director to talk about what's happening and how the direction of the game is going to go from here. Because it feels like we're designing these sets in vacuums. It feels like we're designing Magic limited sets, which is fine if we had a self-contained limited format where you could expect that only a couple of cards were to get out in standard, but that's not how these sets are built. That's not how the game is built. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of a coherent vision for how we're going to get all these different elements back in check without having Chillwind Yetis running.
I mean, unless it literally is, all right, we're most of the way there. Just one more crappy expansion launch, and then next year, it's going to be great because the deflation will have worked, right? If there's anyone left.
We are at the point now where we were meta-wise when the In the Works blog post came out, right? We are at Giggling Inventor right now in terms of like how that was. And that was the lowest point in Hearthstone up to that point.
I do want to clarify, like, when I'm talking about this arms race and the numbers being too big, I'm not actually necessarily saying blanket we have too much power creep and we need to go down. I think it's a little bit of an imbalance in that the type of power creep that we have, like, I think specifically the sort of OTK damage needs to come down a bit so that the armor can come down a bit, so that the board-based, like the middle board-based decks are not just squeezed out from both directions. I also think just like, we're just going to wait until all the numbers are smaller. If all the numbers are smaller in the exact same way, does that, I don't know, you know. So again, I think there are some genuine conundrums here. I don't think it's an easy problem to solve. And I think there have been decks that I've enjoyed playing this year, right? Like I've liked the Dark Gifts, I think was a really clever set mechanic, for example. So I do want to make that point. And we have had things that you could call mid-range decks. But I think it's also true that, you know, when someone tells you they're not having fun with the game, they're right about that, right? Like we can disagree about what would fix it. But somebody's having fun or they're not having fun. And there's definitely, you know, if Kibler is taking a break from the game, that's for a reason. I still love this game. I want it to do well.
Me too.
But it's frustrating to watch. You know, like, so in our Discord server, we try to keep the main channel a little more upbeat if we can. When a new set is being released, we want it to focus on like, what are the cool things we could do with this before we start saying like whether it's going to be bad. But in the past couple weeks, it has been hard. I have, you know, there are levels of things like we obviously, you know, we don't want to like do personal attacks against anyone, obviously, but it's been hard to feel like I can tell people we need to keep all the salt to the salt mine. When it just feels like it was not, even though there were some decks that I had fun playing in the past couple of weeks, it was not the way that anyone, I think, really wanted the expansion to launch, right?
I mean, that's not, like, nothing is to say that you can't find fun in the game, but feels like it takes a lot more effort than it ought to. A lot when it happens. And, like, like, you should not, like, the problem with you know, the arms race of armor versus OTK damage is that not everyone enjoys having to do a complicated word problem in math under a time limit, which is what a lot of the OTK decks are, right? And unless you're playing like aggro, which not everyone enjoys either, that's your option. And like there were a couple decks on the day that I was streaming that someone suggested, and I'm like, I am not awake enough to be able to play this deck because I'm not going to be able to do this math. And it's like, but those were the kind of the decks that were performing well, right? So it's like, well, what do? I don't want to do math, like not that much math, right? They're like, we're all signing up to do math when we're playing these games, but there's a limit to how much math you're doing under time pressure, right? And
right, but at the same time, we don't want there to be no decks where you're doing math because there are people who love the decks where you're doing math,
right?
So yeah, it is tricky to balance all these things. We're never going to have them all in balance, but hopefully we can have more of it. Not balance is maybe not even quite the right word I want to say, because it's not the same as whether there's diversity of decks with equal win rates, right? It's about just sort of diversity of play styles that people find fun.
Yeah.
And that's hard, but hopefully we can come to a place where more people are happy with it. People will always complain about something, but
and I will say, while I played a lot of Gloomhaven and you know, less Hearthstone than I usually do at an expansion launch, I did go 16-4 with Location Warlock to Legend, like, before the patch. So, like, yeah, there's still cool stuff to try. There's still innovation being done, right? Like, I think the alarm is just that they desperately had to release this patch so quickly without waiting for stuff to play out, because the one thing that was very clear is that all the quests were garbage.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they have a bundle of signature quests in the shop
for $120.
Yeah.
Right.
So
for all your leftover money after you spent $158 on King Crush. But yeah.
Yeah, morale is already low.
Yeah, I mean this all kind of goes together, right? Because this has been a spectacularly bad month for the game.
Yeah.
Just in terms of bad news, right? With King Crush and then Hat and then everything else. Like this is all leading up to a launch that I think we said a couple times on the show. I would love to be talking about the cards, and now we are talking about the cards and the monkey paw curl, right? Because like that's kind of the problem, is that this all kind of ends up interrelated, that there's already negative sentiment because of what's come before, and then also the expansion wasn't good enough to fix that, right? So now we're actually feeling worse because everything else is there, and also the patch is not, or the expansion is not great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I should probably let you guys talk about this patch. And
so now we can talk about what they're trying to do to fix it, and then we will figure out if that is a thing that's happening. So we are going to bid farewell to Megasa. Do you have any coin concedes that you want to give on the way out before you go?
Yes, let's see. I will give a coin concede to two of you for holding down the fort, and also putting up with me last minute being like, no, wait, I'm going to make your episode that has like a record number of changes in it longer because I really want to talk about my new theory. Also,
so basically it's a week. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made in the Discord a coin concede bingo because I had joked about that on a previous episode, and one of the squares was Megasa writes show notes in full paragraphs. This was in bullet note format, but with some full sentences. Well,
but also you made the bingo card, so I have questions.
I had to be equally, if not more, onto myself. Anyway, if anyone is curious about that, it's in the questions for the cast channel. All right, so thank you all, and now I get to go back to writing about neurodiversity. So,
all right, back to work, and then we're going to go back to work. Bye, Megasa.
Bye.
So, and then we are going to talk about the patch that we hope is going to fix at least some of this.
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
So we have one news item. We've already talked about it. We've referenced it a lot, which is patch 33.0.3, which released today as we were recording this. So I will say there are also Battlegrounds fixes in here, and there's like a handful of bug fixes. We'll get to them at the end. There's only one that's for constructed Hearthstone. The dev comment is, with the launch of the Lost City of Ungora last week, our primary goals for this patch are to infuse power into several of the new cards and to tone down some of the older decks and early outliers. We're doing buffs earlier in this expansion cycle because we can see from the early data that many of the new cards are not meeting expectations, and that nerfs alone won't result in the changes we want to see.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we should say, because not everyone follows everything, right? Like there were a number of graphics. I can't remember how many times the graphic from the front page of HS Replay was posted with 40% win rates on pretty much every quest deck except for Paladin. So, and again, that's most of the cards in the set. So if you wanted to play new stuff for the set and you were not playing Fish, you were sad. So will you be less sad? I don't know, but we're going to talk about what they're doing to fix it. So Lo the Living Legend is going from 7 mana to 9 mana. Good, get out. Like this did fix Naga Sea Witch back in the original day. I think that went from like 5 to 8.
Yeah, 5 to 8.
Putting it up to 9 mana, even in Druid, should make it so that it was already kind of a little bit sketchy if you didn't have like Ceaseless Expanse, whether you're going to make it through the low turn or not. And now like you are probably not going to make it to turn 9 if this is your only game plan and you're all in on it. Like, and I think if you're not all in on it, I don't know why you're playing low, honestly.
Yeah, but I mean, it makes it more about something like an Aulonius plan, right? Something like I have a few things that I want to reduce cost to 5, rather than just turbo to this so I can get out my giants fast.
Yeah. So I think this at least should have the intended effect.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm sure somebody will figure out some way to break it, but we've had 9 mana, your minions cost X minions before, and they've generally been safe without a lot of additional support making them broken. I mean, Aviana's reared its ugly head occasionally, but it's not like OG Aviana, not like Priest Aviana.
So yeah, Low was the obviously broken card from
Yes.
the set.
Yeah. One might call it the low-hanging fruit.
Indeed.
Yes. So Ball Hog is now going from Battle Cry and Death Rattle deal 3 damage to the lowest health enemy. Now it's Battle Cry and Death Rattle deal 2 damage to the lowest health enemy. This again was fine until we started recurring Death Rattles all over the place in Demon Hunter, but it's really there's a lot of it, and they've tried to do some things around it, but I mean Ball Hog is kind of the issue, and interestingly better for the quest, because it does 2 damage, assuming that you can kill it off on your turn.
I actually love this. I mean, yeah, it's something that like still gives you a quest tick. You know, it would be even better if they made it like a 3 mana 2/2 or something, but you know, too much. I actually kind of love that you can use this as like just a little extra, you know, progress the quest and gain some life, because one of the problems you can have with the quest deck is sustain, you know, if you are just like taking a little bit too much damage. So just, you know, I don't think it's that intentional, but I do find it kind of fun that it's like, okay, we'll make this a little bit worse because the recursion, and also it deals 2.
I mean, we'll take whatever we can get at this point, right? So it's like
I'm just gonna make a note also. Okay, so Ball Hog, that's Whiz Bang, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Low is brand new, right?
Yeah,
so
that I know.
Yeah,
I'm just going to say what expansion each of these are from.
Yeah, I think that is good to call out. Yes. So Sock Puppet Slither Spear, which is the 1/3 in Demon Hunter. This means attack is improved by your heroes. It's going from a 1/3 to 1/2.
Yep.
So it's a 1-drop. It should probably be a little bit easier to kill than it is. 2 damage is more likely to get traded off by 1-drops than 3 damage is. So this hopefully will help with being able to clear those things, because sometimes those could stick around for an annoyingly long time.
Yeah.
And being able to get rid of it a little bit easier is probably a good thing.
This is also Whiz Bang.
Yes. Yes, it is. Ever-Burning Phoenix, which is 4 mana 2/2 with Death Rattle, return this to your hand, is now going to be moved up to a 3/2, but is going to be returned to hand at the end of turn. This is obviously a nod towards Cycle Rogue, because this would often get replayed over and over again, and Shadow Stepped and replayed in order to trigger the draw card whenever you play a card that you've already played this game. And it was actually banned in Wild because it was so broken there.
Yeah.
And I mean, Cycle Rogue is one of those decks that is very interesting in the way it came together, but it is just incredibly boring to play against, just because you have to sit there and watch your opponent play with their cards for not 15 minutes, I don't want to exaggerate, but it's for a full 75 seconds, and probably longer than that, 'cause you have to wait for all the animations to drain before your turn starts.
Yeah, it's a solitaire deck, right? It is like there's a few turns of interaction. Like the interaction is all on their side of the board mostly, right? There's very little you can do counterplay wise as their opponent, besides like hope they mess up and try and make awkward turns for them if you're an aggressive deck. If you're something controlling, it often comes down to like, do you have it or not, right? Do you have the board clear for the Giants? If yes, you probably win. If no, you probably lose.
Yeah. And Dirty Rat's especially unhelpful against this deck, because if you hit the Phoenix, you just help them, right? So it's like, it doesn't do anything because of the Death Rattle. So yeah, returning it at end of hand means that they're not going to be able to do all the cycle during the turn with Ever-Burning Phoenix. It very likely kills the deck.
It definitely kills the deck. It might kill the card. Like, I guess there's maybe a world where you run this in something, you know, more board based, right? That just a menagerie deck, right? That just tries to refill every turn with a few things. It probably would have to cost like 3 for that to work, right? I think playing 4 things for a free 3/2 is going to be tough every turn if you are a more just like honest board based deck. But that's kind of the only place it could see play now.
Yeah. Oh, this will also be unbanned in Wild after this change.
Yeah.
So it's they're very confident. I mean, that tells you the confidence that this change is going to do the thing.
And
so.
again, I'm happy to see that deck go. Right?
Yeah. Like I mean, one thing that I didn't really get to talk about in the other section, but something that is a little bit of a concern is just like I do wonder how much they're play testing, how much fun these decks are to play against, right? Like when you're playing as them, they can be very fun, especially if you're doing the thing, you're doing a lot of game actions. Some of these decks are not particularly fun to play against, and this is one of probably the worst offenders in that regard.
Well,
I mean, I
wait,
was
no,
yeah.
No one was playing this deck before the expansion came out in testing. That didn't happen.
Yeah. So yeah.
And
well, no, I mean like this was from last set, right? So like there was a cycle. There have been cycle rogues for a while.
Sorry, you're saying
not
like
this specific incarnation of it, but like the last version, right? Like there was clearly a deck that they were building around this and the other cards in that set, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how often what they're designing for is something like that, though. Where like I think actually it is less common that they would sort of intentionally put and this deck we're designing it so that they draw the entire deck on turn 5 and play giants. Like I don't think that's realistically a thing they're doing. It just happens sometimes.
Sure. But the whole play pattern of, killing it and bringing it back, like that's something that you can anticipate is going to happen to some extent.
Yeah.
Like it's their job to kind of figure out like what's the worst thing that's going to happen if we print this, right? And that is the worst thing that's going to happen. So yeah. Aegis of Light is which was going from 1 mana, summon a random 1-cost minion and give it taunt, imbue your hero power, and Paladin is now 2 mana, summon a random 2-cost minion and give it taunt, imbue your hero power. So no more turn 1 imbues. This is going to compete with some other things in the curve. 2 mana is a lot harder to fit in a turn than 1 mana. So this is going to make, I don't think this kills Imbue Paladin by any stretch of the imagination, but does slow it down by a turn. It does make those turns where you would have very easily been able to fit Aegis of Light in a little bit more often.
Yeah, and I think it's more a nod to Drunk Paladin than the Imbue deck, really, right? Because Drunk Paladin was just like, it's a 1-cost holy spell. Real quick, Everburning Phoenix, that was Emerald Dream. Aegis of Light, also, of course, Emerald Dream, because it's an Imbue card.
Hot Spring Glider, which is just printed.
Yep.
Is a Murloc that for Paladin, it used to say your next Murloc costs 2 less. It now says your next Murloc costs 1 less. Fine. Good. Like 2 was a lot of a discount, especially when a lot of the Murlocs just cost 2 or cost 1. A lot of them cost 2. So just getting an extra free Murloc on that turn, it was like, I remember when I was playing it and I was like surprised that I was like, I would pass turns and have a green card in my hand and like, I could have actually played that because it didn't even occur to me that it was going to be discounted that much. It seemed like
it also meant that they could curve this into the 6-cost Rusher with that summons the 3 Murlocs with bonus effects, and so now you can't do that anymore. Yeah,
which is also good. That's also going to slow that deck down a lot. It's not the only hit that's getting done to Murloc Paladin, but it is a fairly significant one. I did play against the Murloc Paladin today with the Protoss Priest, and they did die. So that was good. I don't think that would have gone that way before. Brittlebone Buccaneer, whenever you play a Death Rattle minion, give it Reborn. It's going from a 1/4 to a 1/3. It's a 2-drop, so 4 health is a lot on a 2-drop to be able to clear with the kinds of tools that you have available to you. 3 is a lot more reasonable for the kinds of minions that are going to be contesting it, and just like spells that can do damage. There are a lot more spells that deal 3 damage than 4 damage. This will allow you to be able to remove a Brittlebone Buccaneer a little bit more easily before it can kind of get too much value.
Yeah, 1/4 was just tough, right? It was very often correct to just run it out on 2. And now you think a little bit harder about that. And it's one of those things where it's like, the removal often does not deal 4 damage on 2, right? Like, or even 3. So, obviously if people are getting on board, right, you might be able to clear that sort of stuff. But having very powerful things line up health-wise with like removal on that curve is often good.
Yeah, I mean, also, like, if you're an aggressive deck and you decide that you want to trade this off, it's soaking 2 attacks a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Where now it's probably soaking 1, which is a big difference in terms of, like, if that's actually soaking damage that would go to your face, right? That's also relevant. So, Guiding Figure, which is the Starship piece for Death Knight, is going from which has Spell Burst, trigger a random friendly minion's Death Rattle, is going from 2 mana to 3 mana. I am going to defer to you on this because you had a lot of thoughts when we were talking about it in Discord, so I'm just going to let you go on this one.
Yeah, so there's some questions, and we'll see about whether this is enough, right? I think people are pretty tired of Starship DK, and maybe it will come back as sort of like, well, quest's not good enough. Let's just go on back to Starship DK as the control deck. I think kind of the most important thing it does, and sort of why they went about the change this way, is it means that there's no longer an Exodia curve that the deck can hit, where it would just sort of accidentally go Guiding Figure into Soulbound Spire, into, you know,
Arcanite Death Crystal,
another one of those two things, and then Arcanite on 5, and then they'd be like launching and playing Orbital Moon anywhere from turn 6 to turn 8, which is a point in the game where if that Starship happens with 10 power, like, the game is over against so many things. And putting this to 3 means a lot of disruption to the curve, right? It means that you're competing with Soulbound Spire for the 3 slot. A lot of times on 4, they would want to play the Leech card. And now, if they're going to play that draw 2, summon 2 leeches, it means that they're postponing playing the other 3-cost Starship piece. And then maybe they want to play Arcanite, right? So it's not until 6, so they get to play the Starship piece. Like, there's just a lot of sort of compounding things that, you know, not just a 1-mana nerf, but like a 1-mana nerf that sets it at the same mana cost, the same spot on the curve as another essential piece, just kind of slows the whole machine down. So it's not that, you know, people won't be able to do Starships in Death Knight anymore, right? Like, the deck still functions and we'll be able to do that later, but you won't get those like just early game Starship blowouts that were, I think, part of what made the deck just sort of so premium in terms of being the Death Knight control deck, is because it could do that, and if you were trying to do anything else in the control space, you couldn't do that. So like, you know, maybe you're doing great with leeches being aggressive, you know, where you've got the 6-drop, right? And or you have other things going on as a control DK, but then they've assembled the Starship and made it happen very quickly, and like, what are you gonna do? And as we've said, there's not a lot of silence or other stuff to do about that. So while there's problems with having a very powerful poof that everyone has access to or thing in terms of Reno or Bob, I think we are sort of feeling the absence of, like, I don't know, having
counterplay.
A couple of options besides just a single 4-mana tradable silence. But
or Hex, right?
Yeah.
But then you have to have a playable Shaman deck in order to be able to play Hex,
right?
Which we also
I haven't seen any Starship DK yet. It might sort of sneak out.
I did see one.
You did see one?
Yep.
Yeah.
I did beat them with the Protoss Priest.
Oh, good.
But so it was a little bit slower, and I was able to beat them. But I did see one today. So.
Yeah.
I'm still sub-legend because I played a lot less than you did. So
that location deck really just carried me.
Yeah. So Murmur, I kind of alluded to this earlier. Murmur is just dead at this point. I think it's is going from your Battlecry minions cost 1 but immediately died after being played, to your first Battlecry minion each turn costs 1 but immediately dies after being played. So the only time that Murmur has seen any play is when we were chaining together Ysera and Shutterblock and Hagatha and a bunch of different things in a turn to come up with a huge scam board. And otherwise, like, Murmur is just, you can just play the battle cry minion because it's not going to live, right? Like, if this is on the board and it lives, you probably won anyway. So you need to get value out of this card the turn that you play it. And if you are paying 8 mana for your first Battlecry minion anyway, why don't you just play the Battlecry minion?
Yeah, right. It's apart from cheesing out something like Ceaseless, right?
Sure.
It's one of those things where, okay, well, if you're designing a particular direction, but then you create a super meta cheaty card like this that is either unplayable or kind of breaking things. It used to be 6 mana, then they nerfed it to 7 mana, and now it's like, well, now that we're nerfing a whole bunch of other stuff that we think things are going to slow down, this could become the premium create non-games thing. And it got more consistent with the draw to minions of different minion types.
Right, because it's an elemental. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, previously it was like, well, you could targeted draw battle cries, but you couldn't targeted draw an elemental. Now it's easier to do. This, and then also Nerlex, right? Where it was like, It was doing nothing except the Zarimi deck that killed you all at once, right? They just played a bunch of dragons and then killed you right away. And I don't know, do we want to have those effects exist for some months and then say, okay, it's time to turn them off? Like,
yeah,
could if this is foreseeable, why not just design in a different space?
Like, at this point, like, why not just have like one expansion at a time, have a really large core set, and then just design the meta that you want to have, and then rotate everything out. And I'm not saying that that's a thing that they should do, but like, when we're taking Murmur was Great Dark Beyond.
Yes,
right?
Murmur, and of course, guiding the figure is also Great Dark Beyond.
So like, we've had this for 6 months and it's effectively deleted for the game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't see how that's a positive.
And Nerlex even less time, right?
Yeah. Nerlex was like in the Emerald Dream and just like didn't even make it out of the expansion before he got nerfed into Oblivion.
Yeah.
So it's like, so what was the plan for these cards, right? Because I mean, we had Murmur for a little while and it was a scam deck, and then they nerfed it twice and now they've basically deleted it. Nerlex was just, I mean, it was a neutral that was, just used in the Zarimi deck, and it was basically not used anywhere else. This is where, when Kibler's talking about like, well, what's the plan? This is the question, right?
Yeah.
Because like, if you are designing a potentially dangerous card like that, the idea is that you're adjusting, you're reducing your design space around that, right? Knowing that you have this dangerous card so that you don't push it too far in that direction. And instead of doing that, it seems like we're just nuking those cards after a very short amount of time. And that's something that is, I don't think any of us necessarily understood that we were signing up for, not that we had a choice in the matter, when they started going to this more laissez-faire approach to nerfs, where they would just nerf these cards to make sure that the new stuff could shine.
Yeah.
I don't think we were like, there's nerfs, and then there's what was the Warsong Commander? Was that the original one that was that was changed to your charge minions have +1 attack? Like,
yeah.
That we're doing that regularly now.
Yeah.
And we may as well just change the text box to be your charge minions have +1 attack on these.
Yeah.
And it would be the same effect.
We've in this patch, they did it to Murmur and they kind of did it to Phoenix. We'll see. Phoenix has a chance where Murmur does not.
Yeah. Murmur, like, there's no reason to play this card. You may as well, like, in general, you want to dust the cards that are getting nerfed, because if it's good again, then you can always recraft it for the same amount of dust.
Yeah.
I would recraft Murmur again to dust it again, like Barn style, like, because it's just it's not coming back from this. So, Brain Masseuse is going from a 2/4 to a 2/3. This is the one drop in Priest. Whenever this minion takes damage, also deal that amount to your hero. I mean, a 1 mana 2/4 is a lot.
Yeah.
And the downside never seemed to be a downside. And so I think that's fair. I mean, this has been kind of a mainstay of every aggressive Priest deck since it was printed in Perils.
And Demon Hunter, right? Because it got
and
toured.
Demon Hunter too.
So
yes, because Demon Hunter can tour into Priest, yeah.
And yeah, sort of if you do the Fiery War Axe test, it didn't die to Fiery War Axe, which meant it also didn't die to the new Whirlwind weapon, right? That swings for 2, but then does 1 to all minions. Yeah, 2/4
and
is
it didn't do a lot of other 1-drops and 2-drops in the format, right?
Yeah,
because like there aren't a lot of 1-drops and 2-drops that deal 4 damage.
Well,
and if you're running a weapon into it, you're taking 6 damage from this thing. Because it's hitting you, you're hitting it, and then it's hitting you in the face the next turn because it's not dead, and then you're hitting it again.
Yeah.
Right?
It was like, yeah, the downside only would come up against other aggressive decks.
And even then, sometimes it was an upside anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I did have one time that I was able to like shield slam it for like 30 or something like that.
Yeah.
Which was very entertaining for me. But that didn't come up often enough.
Yeah, it does not matter if it's coming down on 1.
Yeah. Wilted Shadow, and Megasa referenced this earlier. Wilted Shadow is the 7 mana 7/7 for Priest that has lifesteal, and whenever you heal an enemy, this attacks it. It is going to a 6/7. So this is assuming that you're healing with the bandages, which is usually how the OTK is working.
It's exclusively how it works. Yeah, you get a bunch of bandages.
Well, I mean, sometimes you have a hero power that you might be able to fit in if it comes down a little bit later. But yeah, on 7 you're using the bandages because they cost 0.
But it's not like you're dedicating a lot of cards to like heal effects. It's just you are resurrecting that 3-drop to get more bandages.
Right. So it's going to mean that it's taking. So basically, before it was doing net 4 damage after the first hit, right? Because you're dealing the first hit, assuming they're full life, it deals 7. And then everyone after that, you heal 3 and then you deal 7. So you're dealing net 4, right? Mm-hmm. So it's 6 times 4 is 24. And then 7 is 31. So now it's going to be net 3 instead of net 4, which is a lot more bandages in order to kill somebody.
Yeah.
Which is not to say that it's not doable. Now, I don't know why they didn't just make the bandages cost 1 if they don't want this to be an OTK. That's the other thing that's kind of surprising to me, because I mean, Careless Crafter is an older, that's again from Whizbang, right?
Yeah.
And that seems like in times gone by, they probably would have done that, because if the problem was that you're giving a bunch of 0 mana things that heal, well, maybe we make the things cost mana and then you can't kill somebody unless they want you to be able. This is where I don't know, right? Because like, do you want people to be able to OTK with this card or don't you?
I mean, this change says to me, yes, but tone it down, right? Like that's what this change is. And I think they've done it a couple times, right? Like they did not outright kill the Psycho Rogue last time. They changed Webweaver from 1 mana to 2 mana. And it, went away for a while and then came back when it got a Platysaur or whatever. And the new 2-cost draw spell for Rogue, right? Like new build, that comes back. This change says to me the same kind of thing, where it's like, okay, this thing is still doable because we know some people are interested in this, so we'll give it a chance, but we don't want it to be as powerful because it will invalidate the quests if it's like really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does mean that there's potential for, nope, it's still good and it beats the quest things, so then they have to do the thing of like, okay, well now we make it just not a deck by making the bandages cost 1. Yeah.
And I Careless Crafter was never played before this.
Yeah, I was
so
like, it's kind of exciting that it's getting its moment to shine, right?
Yeah. So I don't know, but anyway, we'll have to see if that's still viable or if people figure out how to do that, if it's worth it or not. Time will tell. I mean, it's still technically possible. So you're saying there's a chance, right? So
right.
Bringil is going from it was a 2-mana 2/1 neutral with Battlecry. Give your all friendly Murlocs death rattle, draw a card. Importantly, all includes itself. Is now going to a 3-mana 3/2, and it says give your other Murlocs death rattle, draw a card. So it is cutting down on 1 card drawn. It does nothing if you play it by itself, and it is coming down a turn later, which means that it's going to be harder to fit into a turn where you're already spamming the board with a bunch of Murlocs.
Yep.
So I think this is a good change. Again, I played against a Murloc Paladin and I beat them, so 100% win rate, I guess. But yeah, well, but this does seem like that was one of the things that it gave it. A deck like that should be able to run out of gas, and this really prevented it from being able to run out of gas, both because it was giving it an extra draw for itself and also because it was easier to fit into the curve, especially when the other Murloc was discounting your next Murloc by 2. So now the other one's only going to discount it by 1, and then this costs 3, so it's going to be a lot harder to just fit into those turns.
Yep.
And then the real new card of the set, Menagerie Jug, is going from give 3 random friendly minions of different minion types +3/+3 to give 3 random friendly minions of different types +2/+2. So it is going from +9/+9 to +6/+6.
Right. It's going back to the way it was before, right? They buffed it when they put it in core. Which is interesting because, I mean, I guess there's a philosophical question in a way of like, well, what is the purpose of core, right? Is it to enable other stuff, right? Or is it to give even people who don't have big collections, some standout cards to work with? Certainly, Menagerie Jug, I guess, enabled things, but what it enabled was, okay, what are the best minions that happen to be different minion types that I can play, so that I can get +9/+9 and just sort of be threatening that anytime I have, some of those things on the board. Yeah, I think there's a world where like it still gets played at +2/+2, but if it doesn't, it's in core. Like,
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Right. So everything that's disenchantable will be available for full refunds for the next 2 weeks. Importantly, Menagerie Jug is a core card, but if you have the Caverns of Time copies, those will only show up if you're filtering to wild cards. So do check that if you want the dust for those. The way you find this is you type refund into the search bar in the collection. Everything will come up if you're just looking at standard cards except for Menagerie Jug. So do make sure to check for that too. I mean, it's probably not going to be a whole lot of dust because how much Caverns of Time did you open? But maybe it's 80 dust that you wouldn't have had before. You can go get yourself something nice. I don't know. And then we're going to get to the buffs. And the buffs are buffs. We'll see. Some of them are good. Some of them, who knows? But so reach equilibrium, which is the priest quest. Both sides of it, both the holy side and the shadow spell, are going from cast 5 shadow spells or holy spells to cast 4 holy spells or shadow spells to complete the quest. I mean, maybe. I feel like the problem with the priest quest is half that it took too long, but also that the damage is random, and the decks that you're probably going to be trying to beat it with have armor, and that the damage that's coming out of the elementals is not going to be enough unless you're really cooking with like cloud serpents and stuff like that.
Yeah, which did also get buffed. So like
it did get buffed. We'll get there.
Maybe. I think this is definitely like gives it a chance. I think it is a quite powerful reward, and 4 spells does feel like the right place. The question, really is going to be, what does the meta look like? If it's like way too much armor, then no, it's not really gonna work out.
Or if decks go super wide, right? Because if decks are going so wide that these are not hitting face and just like clearing a minion,
I mean,
then
there's still 8 attack minions, right? And it is 4 instances.
Yeah.
But I think, it is going to be something that uses, Cloud Serpent for multiple instances. Feels more attainable now, though. I haven't gotten to tinker with it yet, but I am interested. It's like a Nightshade Tea plus Resuscitate, and that's your Shadow done.
Or like a Thrive in the Shadows to find the Nightshade Tea.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah.
The Holy is really kind of the trickier one. I mean, you've got the 1-drop that gives you a holy spell, and you've got like Power Word Shield, and there's some other things, but Nightshade Tea kind of handles the shadow side pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, there's other ways to get holy spells, but yeah, it's harder, and like we said, the 3-drop Death Rattle is not it. So Reanimate the Terror is the Death Knight quest. It is going from spend 18 corpses to spend 15 corpses, and importantly, it is going from Blood Unholy to just Blood Unholy. So they're removing the triple rune requirement and allowing it to be included in a more variety of runes.
Yeah, I mean, that alone, I think, gives it more of a shot, right? Because people can experiment in both the control direction and the sort of like more aggressive direction. I don't know how it's worked out, but I did see someone trying to do this that had Corpse Skull in their deck.
Sure.
There's maybe a universe where you are just like playing an aggressive strategy that has things like Foam Render and Corpsicle, and so eventually you get this reward. Now you're still giving up a card in the mulligan, and you're turn 1, so is that going to set you too far behind? Maybe, but I think there's kind of more of a shot, and with the bit of a hit to Starship DK, maybe Death Knight starts to do something here. Something that I kind of forgot is that if you do go the more controlling strategy and make space for release, getting the like summon a copy of a minion, right? You can do that on the reward, so that's pretty cool. And then you can have sort of a more flexible good card in Elise that like sometimes lets you get extra terrors rather than going the full on like copy a location you have.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a step in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's hard to tell with any of these how much is going to be enough, but Spirit of the Mountain is the Shaman quest, which is going from play 7 minions of unique types to play 6 minions of unique types. This is the one deck I did lose to today with the Protoss Priest.
I am going to try this one.
I will say, if this is going to be a thing, they need to speed up that adaptive animation. It is so slow, and especially because they shutter blocked it. And it's just every time they play a minion, it has to go through the 6 adapts like coming onto the screen. I just kind of checked out because it's just like, oh god, just tell me when your turn's over, because I don't want to have to see all those animations over and over and over again. But it did the thing, and it did it pretty quick. So I mean, again, it's a 1 game sample size. Also, Ashelon Ridge Guardian, which is the quest reward, has Rush, which is relevant.
Yeah, because no adapt is going to give it Rush, right? Because the adapts are a different thing from bonus effects.
And it predated Rush anyway.
Right.
When the original Angora was before Witchwood, which is when Rush was introduced.
Oh gosh, yeah, I forget that sometimes. So yeah, I think that one's a quite significant change that remains to be seen. Again, a lot of these I feel like it is sort of, yes, it's good that these be easier to complete, and I think that gives them a chance, but a lot is going to depend on like whether other things have been toned down enough.
Yes.
Um,
And again, I don't know if the deck I was playing was like, designed to beat something like that. But I mean, it's not the most aggressive deck in the world, but it's not slow.
Yeah.
It's faster than I normally would play. And it did get there. So where the other quests did not.
mhm.
So, including the Paladin one. So, again, small sample size, but it is a thing. So, Shock Jungle Tyrant, which is the Hunter quest reward, is going from get a random 8, 6, and 4 attack beast set their cost to 2 to discover any, which means from any class, 8, 6, and 4 attack beast set their cost to 2.
Huge change.
Yeah.
I think when for something that you're working so hard towards to get a kind of just loot box of minions is pretty tough when you have to like build so centrally around it. So at least with the Discover, you can shape that somewhat and kind of come up with a game plan, right? And not just feel terrible that you whiffed, or at least much less likely end up with the, oh god, these are such terrible whiffs. And I think it, even though it's Discover, it might still let you do other classes, because I feel like I heard
It does. It does. That's what any means.
Oh, right.
Discover any means it's from any class. So it
Gotcha.
does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And presumably this would work with Ragnari Scout as well.
Sure.
I mean, you have to have a lot of hand space for that, but I mean,
yeah. But it's meant that people are doing things like you get Agamagan from Warlock, right? Which makes your next thing pay the opponent's health.
That's the big hit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a 7 attack. Or sorry, 8 attack. Yeah, 8 attack. It's an 8/9. And yeah, getting them reduced to 2 obviously is what makes it, really, really strong. So yeah, I've heard good feedback about this change from the Hunter players.
Yeah. I mean, you basically have, I'm looking at 8 cost, not 8 attack. Never mind. So I don't even know how to filter the card library by attack, but yeah, I mean that Agamagnon. I mean, you also have like 8 hands from beyond. It's like one of the other ones.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe that's good. Maybe it's not. Who knows? But it at least giving you some agency, so you're not just like stuck with garbage.
Yeah.
Is like if you're doing all that work and then you end up with just like stuff that doesn't work. Like you can whiff on to Discover, but it's harder. So, Titanographer asks,
why? You would have to make this like under 4 cost for it to be playable.
Yeah. So this is the mage legendary minion that gains a random Titan ability in your hand that changes each turn. It's going from a 7-mana 7/7 to a 6-mana 6/6. Sure, it's still just as unplayable. It's not like the problem is not that it was costing too much. Like I would say it has to go to like 2.
Oh yeah, like 2,
and even then I probably
3.
wouldn't play it on purpose.
Right. Yeah, but like it's just dead.
Yeah. There are whole Titans that cost 6 mana.
Yeah. And you get only one of the effects, and at like a random time that you hope is opportune. It's just they made a diamond of this. I just don't understand sometimes.
It's baffling, right? Like I don't. Again, if every card has to hit, like I could tell you that this is not gonna do it. Like we've had cards like this before. None of them have been good, going all the way back to Shifter's Eris.
Mm-hmm.
Like none of these cards have been good. So why is this one going to be the exception, especially when it's more underwhelming than like a Shifter's Eris? Or I mean, not the Shifter's Eris, because that pool is wide. Like, yeah, it's a narrower pool, but like those as a one shot are not always good. And then having to wait around for it to be something you want, and then have to divert your turn plan to accommodate it, because it may never be good again. Like, you need to be able to fit it into a turn way earlier, and 6 mana means you're taking up most of your turn doing it still.
Yeah. Like, I think it would have potentially insane power spikes at 2 mana, But yeah, it's also the only way that it's playable, because it has to like not be that big a diversion from your game plan. And I just, this is one of those, like, why does this exist? Somebody didn't like mage, I guess. It's
And like, why are we wasting time buffing it?
right.
Because
It's like
what are you expecting to happen? Because you cannot expect that this alone is going to make it playable. It just isn't.
And also, like, this is not related to the quest at all. Right?
No.
It's like completely unrelated to the quest, completely unrelated to the other things Mage has going on. It's just its own independent thing that, help. It would need an insane amount of help, and what would even be the purpose? I don't know.
It's cute. It's a cute idea, but like, unless you're getting it off of like that legendary, that minion that discovers a legendary with a dark gift, right? Like, when are you ever playing this? You just aren't. There's no reason for you to put this into a deck and spend most of your turn doing an underwhelming ability. You just aren't going to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very baffling. But anyway, we've probably spent more time on it than it deserves. So, Master Dusk, which is the quest reward for Rogue, is the hero. That's the hero card that has Battlecry summon 2 3/3 ninjas with stealth. Your ninjas now shuffle back in your deck when they die, and then you can pay 1 mana as the hero power to draw a card that didn't start in your deck. It's going from 5 mana 5 armor to 3 mana 8 armor.
Yeah. The big deal here is both, like, obviously defensively it helps. Rogue isn't really a heal class. But yeah, going to 3 mana, it would be like, oh, 5 mana is already like pretty cheap. Yeah, but you sort of need to be able to like play another shuffle effect and play Master Dusk for it to happen on turn 5, and you sort of need it to happen that fast, or you're just gonna die.
And even then, like, the stuff that comes out, they're just guys, right? Like, they're just 3/3s with stealth. So
yes, they can be quite aggressive. No Hands was messing around with this, and we'll see if it has any staying power. But he did sort of build a pretty, like, just turbo complete the quest kind of list that then relies on them on this sort of aggression. And it seemed to have some legs. So
okay, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, it's one of the least offensive rogue archetypes that I've seen in a while. So,
well, it runs agency espionage. So
okay, never mind. I take it all back. So Opu the Unseen, which is a 6 mana 6/4 with Battlecry combo and Death Rattle cast Phantom Knives. He now has stealth. He's unseen, but he wasn't unseen until now. So sure. Again, I don't know if that makes that much of a difference for what it's doing.
So I have a theory, which maybe there's nothing to it, but this is how low morale is and kind of the negative place we are. Titanographer Osk, as we already mentioned, has a signature version. Opu the Unseen. Sorry, the Osk has a diamond version. Opu the Unseen has
that's purchasable in the shop, right?
Yeah. Right. Opu the Unseen has a signature version that was in the Dark Moon Fair. The Dark Moon Treasures.
Oh. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Sure. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, for all we know, it was supposed to have stealth because his name is Opu the Unseen, and they forgot to put it on the card.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? That could also happen. Who knows? And they just took the opportunity to do it because that was when they were going to fix it, and they discovered it too late, maybe. Who knows? Right? Like, whatever. It's not hurting anybody. I don't know how stealth helps it other than flavor. It should have it for flavor, so I'm fine with it. But whatever. Underbrush Tracker, which is the 5/5 with Rush that costs 1 less for each time you shuffle cards in your deck. Now it went from 7 mana to 6 mana. Sure.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Deck needed help.
Deck needs the help. I mean, it was a 20% win rate deck. It needs the help. Buff whatever. It's fine. That's like, yeah, whatever. It's fine. It's not going to hurt anybody. Escape the Underfell is going from, which is the Warlock quest, is going from play 6 temporary cards to play 5 temporary cards. it does go faster. That deck kind of needs to go fast because it needs to get the Rift out. And also the quest reward is going from 5 mana to 3 mana, which is a significant change as well, given that by itself the quest reward doesn't even put a minion on board without you feeding it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do think
it does because you're feeding it, but yeah.
Like, yeah, you will feed it the turn you play it. I think it's just kind of that similar thing of, if you're doing this, you're putting some kind of, suboptimal cards that are only there for the quest in your deck, same as the rogue one. And so making sure that, like, if you do the thing and make it so you can complete it on turn 5, you can actually play it turn 5, and or maybe a little bit later, whatever. Just like letting it ease in with everything else, I think is good. This one, the reducing it to 5, I think is sort of like the main important thing.
Yeah, I would agree.
But this is one where I felt pretty good about the reward. Like it sort of has that great middle ground of, like, it can just get you over the finish line because it's a lot of life gain, it's a lot of charge, it's a lot of taunt, right? You can't reliably get one of those things right every time, but like altogether it's quite powerful and can eventually end the game, but it doesn't like just do it immediately. Like I really liked the design of this quest, but it just felt a little bit too slow to keep up with those jug decks from before. And so maybe now a combination of things slowing down a bit and the quest being easier to complete, maybe we can sort of experiment in this space a little more. Yeah.
Again, ran into this with the Protoss Priest. Beat it, but it did feel faster. So. Entomologist Toru, which is the 7/7 with Battlecry, put each minion in your hand to 0/1 jars that cost 1, break them to release the minions. 9 mana to 8 mana. Okay.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know what the plan is for this. Still don't. But maybe it's a little easier now.
This is another one, though, where it's like, this is a Nerlex. This is a Murmur, right? Started at much higher mana, right? But sort of the space where this card is good is not just value putting out a bunch of stats. It is killing you. Like, or you're not playing it. Maybe people mess with it and it's tier 3 or 4 and whatever, but it's just one of those things where it's like the right combination of sort of expensive minions in your cliff dive deck, and you run this and it's an OTK later on. Just like, what's the plan? Right? What's like,
why are we making this easier? Like, you were clearly scared of it, right? Does it need to be easier? Like, we used to have some of these minions that were just like challenges, right? Like Blood of the Old God.
Blood of the Ancient One?
Blood of the Ancient One, yeah. That was like a 9 mana 9/9. If you could get 2 copies on it out of it on this board at the same time, they would merge into a 30/30. Right? And like nobody ever did. But it was a cool thing that was there. But like, if do we want to break it? I don't know. Anyway, if you want to break it, it's a little easier now. Good luck. Gorishi Wasp, which is the 5, it's 6 mana 2/8 for Demon Hunter, with Rush, and whenever it takes damage, get a 1 cost. Gorishi Stinger is going from a 6 mana 2/8 to a 5 mana 2/7 with Rush. Again, quest deck needs the help. The 5 mana 2 attack minion ought to have Rush.
Yeah.
I
still don't know if it makes the cut because of the change to Ballhog, because now you do want that. But it's at least like on the board now, right? It is of interest. It's worth considering.
Also, speaking of the Demon Hunter quest, Unleash the Colossus, it is going from deal exactly 2 damage to an enemy on your turn 15 times to deal exactly 2 damage to an enemy on your turn 12 times. Yep, fine. should be okay. I mean, if you're putting all that stuff that's doing exactly 2 damage, like, you really need to be able to convert that into damage relatively quickly, or convert that into 4 damage relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And the more that you have to use to get the quest done, the less that you have that you can go face with.
Yeah, I sort of feel like there's a pattern of we're really trying to move things towards it's semi-reliable or possible to complete the quest by turn 5 and play the reward on, 5 or 6, depending.
Sure.
This one may be a little bit trickier than the rogue one, but you don't really want to be playing it past turn 6 because you're still an aggressive strategy. So if you're going to be playing your payoff, it needs to be coming down pretty early. You can't be like waiting around to play it on turn 7, turn 8. So, and the fact that like all of these are a little bit tamer, I think is the reason why it's okay for the rewards to come down on turn 5, turn 6.
Yeah. Because they're not game changing. I mean, some of them are, but like
they are game changing.
Even then,
but they're not necessarily like, unless you are already in an advantageous position, you're not going to like just win in a couple of turns.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's not like the Crystal Caves,
right?
Crystal Caverns, whatever the hell it was.
Yeah,
I've already suppressed the memory. Cloud Serpent, which is the 4 mana 4/3 battle cry. Get a copy of another elemental or dragon in your hand, is now going to a 3 mana 3/3. So it's going to be a little bit easier to fit in. Something like if you want to get that with the Shaman Quest, that's something. Shaman Quest reward, that's something you can do if you don't want to shutter block and you're happy with just 4 adapts instead of 6. Something you can do with the Priest Quest reward. That's a thing that you can do. That was pretty much the original thought process for that, and now being able to do that a little bit and get more of those is a reasonable strategy, because fitting that in with 4 meant that you were basically waiting until turn 9 to play that crest reward effectively, or maybe you were playing a Cloud Serpent and then playing this the following turn, and now you can do both those things on 8, which is pretty much when I think you would expect the Priest Quest to be around, ready to be played. You might not want to wait for that for the Shaman one, but certainly for the Priest one, you probably wait till that long.
Yeah.
And then Questing Assistant is the 2 mana 3/2 that said if you played a quest this game, deal 2 damage, and now it says if you played a quest this game, deal 3 damage to an enemy minion.
Which is just so funny, because the one place it was being played was in Quest Demon Hunter, and now it no longer helps you towards that quest. So,
yeah. But it can kill a Brittlebone Buccaneer.
It sure can. Like, it's a better card on the whole. Just contextually, it's sort of funny. Yeah.
I mean, realistically, like, unless you're going face with it, that 2 damage isn't doing anything to anybody anyway. Like, it's not. It's killing 3/2s, but like, there's not enough things that's going to kill for you to want to play that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's all the balance changes. We're not going to get into BGs. Haven't been playing BGs.
Yeah.
Listen to Blizzlet. They've been having fun. There's probably some Battleground specific podcasts too, but
I don't know if there is anymore. But also the only bug fix for Constructed in this patch is that Humult Roan Totem's effect can no longer be stacked if in your deck multiple times.
Thank God. That sounds crazy. This was happening in Arena sometimes, and it was just
right. Yeah.
Ungodly, right? Because it means you started with Hamul, and like maybe you were doing well, maybe you had a mediocre time, but then at 2 losses you got offered Hamul again, and you would take it. And now every time you cast 2 spells, you imbue twice, and that is unbeatable. Like, I'm sure it's possible,
especially
in
Arena.
Holy smokes! I remember doing a double take. I was like, well, hang on, that's like twice as big as last turn. That doesn't seem right. And I was like, oh, Yep. Nope. We lost. I can't. That's happening every turn. There's just no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's insurmountable, especially in arena, like let alone constructed. But in arena, forget it. Like you don't have anything to compete with that.
Yeah.
So.
But anyway, we have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at concede.com. You can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com and subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/@coinconcede. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com and write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Blue Sky at coinconcede. And if you'd like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. So, quick coin concedes. I'm just gonna coin concede to, I guess, the community for, I think, giving us content, but also I guess specifically Kibler, Regis, and Zacho. Of the three, of course, Zacho is kind of the more, up here. But in general, I thought they were pretty level takes.
Yeah.
And obviously that's why we covered them. I'm sure there are others that are less level-headed out there, but yeah, coin concede to those three for kind of giving us this sort of diverse set of opinions that we'd point to. But like, yeah, that is newsworthy, I think, when it's happening all over the place. And I hope that Team 5 figures it out. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we're rooting for them.
We are,
right?
genuinely.
Because I think we have been much more critical in this episode. I mean, probably the last 3 weeks, but this week specifically, we've been much more critical than we typically are. But I think it's with love, right?
Yeah.
Like we love this game still, and we want it to be successful. And it does them no favors to pretend like everything is fine when it isn't.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that doesn't mean that they are bad at what they do. Everyone has a bad day. Right. And sometimes these things just kind of get away from you, and it happens. But we want them to be successful at this. So like, if there's a way to get this turned around, like maybe this is the first step, maybe it isn't. Hopefully we're going to see, when they have a full, development cycle to be able to develop this next patch. Because remember that we're also on an accelerated dev cycle for this expansion,
Mm-hmm.
right? We had the 3 months in between patches instead of the 4, or instead of between releases instead of 4.
Right.
That might also, I mean, that doesn't explain the last 2, but it certainly could contribute to this one. So
yeah,
ultimately, like, that's also there. So hopefully they're gonna, have some retros, figure out what they can do, and see if they can right the ship. And ideally, like, just get a clearer plan together.
Yeah.
Because this game can be great when it's great, but it's right. It's walking a tightrope right now.
Yeah. I mean, that seemed to be sort of the consistent message, regardless of their thoughts on other, problems and solutions, is that like, it is unclear what the design goals are, right? Like what the intent is. It doesn't feel like there's a clear direction. So,
yeah. Well, I'm also going to coin concede to the owner of my game store, who also was running the Command Fest this weekend, who, when I was in the store the week before, gave me a heads up that there was going to be a deck building contest, which was not particularly well advertised. And the prizes were very good.
Oh.
So I took one of my decks that that fulfilled the requirements, because it had to be like, I think like 25% in the last like 6 sets or whatever. And I found one that was, and it wasn't a particularly exciting deck, but I just like gave them that anyway. And I came in 5th.
Nice.
And I won a Final Fantasy bundle, which is like $100.
Wow.
For my $10 entry fee.
That's great.
And there may have only been 5 people who entered.
Uh-huh.
It is entirely possible that there were only 5 people who entered, but I do not care, because I got $100 worth of cards for $10. So
great.
I appreciate him asking me if I was going to do that, and it basically convincing me that was a good idea, especially once I looked up what was involved. So that was a nice surprise this weekend. So
Cool.
but yeah, that is gonna do it for us for this week. So until next time, keep calm and enjoy the new patch. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
All life must end. I yield for now. I concede. Well fought. I concede.
You win this one.
The victory is yours.
You have bested me.
I give up.
You win this one, friend. You win this time. I choose death.